just where you feeling like y'all are heading into the kind of early season tournament? I know this has been a real testing point for y'all through your time here.
Yeah, well, we go 0-3 in year one, cancellation in year two, 2-1 in year three. And the other thing, Travis, this will be the earliest tournament we've played in because the previous tournaments have always been across Thanksgiving week. And so I think this is the earliest we've ever played in a tournament, particularly in our second week of the season. I think the two games that we played were good preparation for what's upcoming. I think our staff has been tremendous in, as I mentioned to you, boiling down to the lowest common denominator what we want to give to the team. And I think our team's done a really good job of being prepared specific to that scouting report and then also playing to the scouting report. And I thought we got in a really good groove last year in Tampa on multi-day tournaments, and we kind of altered our groove a little bit from when we were in Vegas. And so we're going to try to pick up on that again. Did a little bit of the same when we were in New York last year. So this is a quick rep, but it's an early rep, and hopefully it'll pay dividends.
What are some of the? I know you kind of have some whiteboard stats that
Yeah.
are specific to each squad for each year. What are some
Yep.
of the ones for this team?
Sure. Thanks for asking. There's 9 whiteboard stats, and then there's a special teams category. We teach our team what those are after the exhibition. We don't really talk about it when we scrimmage just because there's sometimes in a scrimmage you don't straight up play 40 minutes. So the exhibition we use to teach from, kind of give examples from the exhibition, but also SEC game examples. Contested shots from 3 is a big one. Opponent box percentage, in other words, the paint, and then 1 foot outside the paint, which is the NBA lane line. We call that the box. What was their percentage of time getting to the box, and what was their field goal percentage when they did get to the box? And then vice versa. When they didn't get to the box, what was the percentage of time? And then what was their field goal percentage? And then basically we have goals in each of those categories. And then we do the same thing offensively. Instead of the box, we call it the paint. What percentage of the time did we get to the paint, and what was our field goal percentage? Like against Abilene Christian, we got to the paint 65% of the time and shot 70%. And that doesn't mean that when we got to the paint, we shot the ball. It means that possession prior to a shot, we got to the paint, which just means the defense was in rotation. And then vice versa. How many times did we not get to the paint, and what was our field goal percentage? Our special teams, opponent free throw makes versus our makes. That's a team, a category. ATO. So coming out of an ATO, no matter whose ball it is, we play down back. So the first offensive possession, the first defensive possession. That's a category. And then out of bounds, side out, under out, both offensive and defense. Doesn't matter if they score on the action of the out of bounds play, but did they score on that out of bounds possession? Turkeys you're aware of, that's one of the 9 categories. We had 8 turkeys against Monroe. We had 9 turkeys against Abilene Christian, 3 stops in a row. And so those numbers are all based on teams that advance in the NCAA tournament. And we've been doing it since I was the head coach at New Orleans. And that was because we only had a whiteboard. Now we have a lot of technology, but I still make our guys write it down. It's still like old school in how we do it. It's a little too early for new guys to understand the importance of it. But as the weeks unfold, particularly game days, some of the notes that I'll put on the board specific to our big rocks the priorities for that game, I will include some of those numbers that we're talking about and ask them if they know what the goal is. It's interesting after the game against a good, what was bad, what did we not do, what should we have done better, and KK said, Coach, I don't think we contested as well as we had the previous two games. I was like, oh, that's good. What number do you think it was? Well, it was 56%. That's a low number. But that he recognized it in his first week with us, the priority that we put on it, I thought was very encouraging.
Buzz, I know you don't really pay attention to these kind of things, but the AP rankings come out and you guys are ranked for the first time since you've been here. Do you feel like that's kind of a testament of where this program's headed?
Yeah, I didn't know. My wife is the one that told me. And the last time I talked about rankings, I got in trouble and it turned into a long diatribe. And so I think the way I decided I wanted to respond to that was I don't think those that vote for the AP poll are those that vote on who goes to the tournament. And so we're thankful that we're ranked, but we also understand and have foresight that that's probably not the most important thing relative to what we're trying to accomplish.
And this weekend, I guess, what would you overall, after when you guys come back, would say that was a successful weekend? What are you kind of looking for in this tournament?
We need to play with a lower turnover rate, I would say, through two games. That would be the one thing offensively that we haven't done well. When we have got a shot, we've done some really good things. When we haven't got a shot, we different categories of turnovers, but too many of our turnovers have been live ball. And so stereotypically speaking, live ball turnovers, teams are going to shoot at a very high percentage. And so not only are we not getting a shot, we're preventing an opportunity for an offensive rebound, which I think we have a chance to be pretty good at. We prevent an opportunity to be fouled, and through two games we have been fouled at a high rate. And then on the other end, you're playing without your defense getting set. And so our offense has actually hurt our defense too often through the first week, and we won't be able to play and have a chance to win any of those games with that. I think the one thing that I would say defensively, we have to play without fouling. We fouled way too much in the first half and the second half against Monroe, and we were giving them points because they got to the bonus too early. And then we need to continue to do a really good job of finishing the possession with the rebound. We've been okay, probably not as well as I would have thought, considering the two teams that we played and the priority we tried to put on it. We need to be better in that regard.
You've been rotating quite a few players here in the early going. How much of an advantage is that in a tournament scenario where you're playing in 3 games in like 4 days?
Yeah, I think it's real important. And I also think that we've talked a little bit about this as a staff. This is our second year defensively doing what we do. This is our first year doing most of what we're doing offensively. And it requires a lot from you physically and mentally. And so I think in order to play the way we're trying to play on both ends of the floor, if you have depth concerns, I don't think you can play that way. If depth is part of your, quote, game, then I think you can play that away. We've played, I guess, Monday of last week we played 12 guys, and then Friday night we played 10 guys. And you could argue we could have played the 2 that didn't play Friday that did play on Monday. But I'm very confident in who has played, that they know what they're doing, that they have the skill to execute it, and they have the cohesion no matter who they're on the floor with. Because in practice today, this morning was our 30th practice. And so to your question, one thing that we've realized kind of with each passing week that we as a staff try to make sure we're doing a good job of is mixing and matching those 10 guys, whether we're doing some level of offensive specific work or defensive. we need to make sure we continue to mix and mingle all 10 of those guys. And the two that didn't play on Friday, we're even trying to make sure they're getting good reps too, because you never know in a tournament setting, something happens that you can't control, foul trouble, somebody's not playing good. Yeah, well, we weren't anticipating this. You sub in, and let's keep going. And so I hope that depth, whether it's tournament or not, I hope that over the next however many games we're able to play, I hope that depth is a part of the scouting report on us.
How does that help when guys know they're
That's the whole deal, right?
gonna see action?
Yeah, I've coached a lot of teams that don't have depth. And so whether they're good people or have great competitive character, when they know they get to play no matter what, there's a level of unspoken accountability. If you don't want to do what we're asking you to do, or you're not doing it well, then we're going to try this other one. And so our practices have been very competitive, not without coaching. I'm not saying that, but good players know good players. And our good players know that we have a lot of good players. We do not have the best players. We don't have the most, and we don't have the best one. But we hope that there is power in our group more than in our parts.
So does that, in your mind, when you're recruiting, if you know maybe you don't have that guy, is that what you're looking for then?
Well, I just don't think that guy, whatever his name is, I don't think he likes playing for Buzz. And without ego, even if you look at my career, who has been that guy? It's never worked out that way.
Not
No, we want the best players. We want the best players, but we want the best players that fit how we work every day and understand the culture and the daily habits that we function with. Talent is important. We're not into signing bad players. Bad players will cause my family to have to move to different schools. But we are into really good players, but that are also really good people. I think sometimes we become hostage to talent. And when you become a hostage to talent, now all of a sudden you have to make sure that some unintended consequences come from that talent gathering. I want to gather good character that has talent, because that means that they probably have a higher capacity to work, and that means that they want to be coached, and we coach.
How much more difficult is that to find those guys with the kind of character that you want and need for a team?
Yeah, the pool of applicants shrinks dramatically. And recruiting has changed a lot because of the model at which you have to recruit. I think the one thing that's helped our group is there's 80 years of experience on my staff, regardless of where we've lived. And so there's not mixed messages, and there's not an assistant coach saying one thing to a player and the player's hearing something different from Buzz. I think the wheels on the bus are all going in the same direction, and the wheels on the bus are aware that we're going to hit bumps and potholes, but we're still going to keep trying to move in the same direction. I think that the best thing anymore is relationship currency. You have to be transparent. You have to be upfront. And it's not just with the children, it's also with the adults of the children. Their sphere of influence has to understand what their child is coming to. We sometimes are too negative towards children, and the adults try to their blame in it, coaches included. You have to all be aware. And so I would say that over the last several years, I've probably spent more time with the adults than ever before, because I want to make sure the adults understand. And that doesn't mean that we're right. It doesn't mean that we're wrong. It doesn't mean that we're good. It doesn't mean that we're bad. But I think if everybody is open in their communication and transparent, I think that it helps when you do have bumps in the road, because there's going to be bumps in the road.
Is this the first year that you feel like everyone is going in that direction?
Year one, I wouldn't say anything negative. I thought Chuck Mitchell is one of my favorite people ever. Josh Nebo was incredible down the stretch. I hate to judge anybody or anything during COVID. It was the most trying time of my life, personally or professionally. I think last year we had a good group just with 9 new players. And so there was a lot of, we're starting over, and every day was a new day. This year, there is some returning players who are helping lead those in the new days for the young guys or the new guys. But I think the character of the new people, combined with the character of the returners, combined with the character of the returning staff, it's a combination of all of those things. And I don't think that there's any confusion. I don't think there's confusion whether you're a returner or a new guy or an adult that's associated with someone or relative to the role on your staff. And if relationship currency is the most important currency, it just requires, I think, too oftentimes as a head coach, just because I always get to talk to you guys, that's only a perspective. It's the relationships player to player. It's the relationships coaches to coaches. It's the relationship staff to players without Buzz. It's the relationship Buzz with the staff. It's the relationship Buzz with the players. And then it's the relationship that goes in the triangle. It's all of that. And, like everybody talks about coaching and the stats and this out of bounds play or that turnover rate. And those are pretty, Bubba can look those up on Ken Palm. Like, you look those up on Ken Palm. Like, that's not hard to do. But where you give an enormous amount of energy and an enormous amount of emotion is building that trustful relationship built on love that, hey, now listen, in between the lines, I don't love you any different. But if I have to make a choice, the choice was already made. The decision is for the program. 1B, it's for the individual. And so, yes, I want to help your brand. Yes, I hope you become one of the top 50 players in the NBA. Yes, I want you to make $1 billion, and I'm going to do everything that I can to help you. But at that moment in time, in between the lines, I'm not the head coach. I'm just a steward of the program. That's all I am. They fired every head coach that's ever worked for Texas A&M except one. Every one of them, except Coach Metcalf. Okay, so the odds say, numerically, I'm going to be fired, and I'm okay with that. But whether it was Marquette, whether it was Virginia Tech, whether it's Texas A&M, I don't view myself as the head coach. I view myself as a steward. There was a coach before me, BK, who I absolutely adore and have great relationships with, and he left me letters and notes in his desk when I was hired that I've never told anybody. And there was a head coach that came after me at Virginia Tech who's a distinctly better coach than I am, and I was very involved prior to him ever getting the job. So, like, it's the ego you have to get rid of because ego is the enemy. But the relationship has to be built on the right things. And so I don't even remember what the question was, but that's good.
Coach Metcalf was fired, by the way.
And then when he was fired, he was fully retired, similar to Coach Slocum.
Yeah.
Okay, so a coach would say that that's different. Because Coach Slocum was fired as the head coach when he was 55 years old at Texas A&M, and today he's still employed by Texas A&M, and this is his 44th year. So as a coach, I just view that differently, and Coach Slocum's my hero.
Would that be kind of a deal you'd be looking for in a few years?
I want to be Coach Slocum today.
So you touched on it a little bit last night. Why is it in your career that you have shifted a little bit more towards the kind of 5 guard set? I know you said you like the threes to be four, the fours to be five.
Yeah,
What
just
is it about-
downshift, yeah.
What is it about?
It happened in year number 2. You can research this. There were 15 teams in the Big East. In year number 2, it was not the Big East that has 10 teams now. 15 teams in the Big East. That would have been 2009, 2010. We were predicted 13th. Jeff Goodman, at that time, I believe, was a national writer and wrote an article, Who the Hell is Buzz? Or something along those lines. Mo Acker was our starting point, 5'9" with shoes. David Kubian from Venezuela was 5'10.5" with shoes, our 2. Jimmy, Lazar. Lazar was our 5. He was 6'5". And we kind of developed, we called it around the horn, and it was just based on where the ball went off penetration. And we kind of the offense was red light, green light. That's kind of where the paint touches came from. Can't shoot when the light's red, can only shoot when the light's green. The light turns when the ball hits the paint off the pass or the bounce. We didn't have anybody to throw it to, so to say, back to the basket. So it was always off the drive. And so that's where it was the knockoff version of how they typically play in FIBA. But, you always have somebody in front of the ball. You always have somebody behind the ball. And no matter where you pass it, there's the next guy coming. And we called it around the horn. It was not my invention. It was one of my staff members who was constantly trying to think of how are we going to play with 5 guards. And then it just became almost mockery. I think we went 12-6 in the Big East. Went to the NCAA tournament. We finished tied for 5th, I believe, with 5 guards. And everybody was saying, oh, we're going to get beat because we don't have any big guys. And then what ended up happening in real time during games, coaches were having to downshift to match up with us because we were all just running around relative to where the ball was going. And that's kind of how I taught myself, to be honest with you, how I taught myself to play small ball. And even now, like you could argue, Travis, that our roster of forwards is really good. And it's as big as we have played for sure since we've been here. But you could argue it's as big, like maybe as big as I've ever played. And even today, like some of the things I was mentioning to him, when we mix and match, we still have a small percentage of reps when we play small, and that's when we put Dex or H at the 4. And then it just turns into what I was saying, because it becomes hard to guard. Now it changes what you have to do on the other end defensively, but we also practice that as well.
Coach, what's the challenge of scouting some of these smaller conference teams early in the season now? Before, if a guy was having success, no reason for him to leave and have to sit out. But especially with Murray State, obviously, I know they had a coaching change, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that last night at the radio show. It's another unintended consequence that the transfer portal presents. We're watching personnel on Murray State this morning. They have 4 1,000-point scores at their previous institution. That might be the only team in the country that can say that. We signed all of the transfers we signed, and Dexter was the only one. That's because Dexter was at Wichita State all 4 years. Murray State has 4 of them. So we're showing personnel with a written scouting report. Okay, and here's number 12. He's number 12 for Murray State. But now let's watch clips when he was at Tennessee State, and he's number 24. Well, you're watching clips of the kid who now plays for Murray State, who's only played 1 Division I game against St. Louis last week. But to talk about and watch his game, you have to watch clips of when he was at the previous institution, But at the previous institution, his coach may or may not have wanted him to play the way Coach Prohm is wanting him to play at Murray. And so, like, I don't know that there's an answer to it. Obviously, as the season unfolds, you'll have more clips from the opponent that you play. But, like, we were playing Abilene Christian. Abilene Christian had a kid on their team that was all conference at Abilene Christian, transferred and went to Wichita State, played with Dexter, didn't play in game number 1 against Jackson State because he was in concussion protocol. So now we're doing personnel on Abilene Christian, and I say to Dex, hey, Dex, have you talked to your friend? He's like, yeah. I said, well, do you know if he's going to play? And he goes, he doesn't know. And I said, okay, well, we have clips from Wichita State. We have clips from when he was at ACU the first time, but now he's back at ACU the second time, but he didn't play in game 1. So just tell our guys his game. Like, that's never happened ever, right? And so, like, it's just, it's part of what's required anymore.
Going back to my question one more time, I know you said it's the biggest that you've played.
Yeah.
But even your big guys aren't necessarily true back to the basket
Yeah.
guys. I mean, it's still the same kind of the bones of what you've done.
Yeah, I'm just not real good with guys that are uncomfortable with the ball. Mm-hmm. Like, regardless how small you are or how big you are. Like, when the ball's in your hand, do I have peace? Or, like, when the ball is in your hand, I'm like, hurry up, get rid of it. Even if get rid of it is shoot it. Like, when Julius has that ball on the perimeter, like, first of all, if you throw the ball to Julius and he's 6 feet from the basket, he's a bucket. But if you throw the ball to him 20 feet from the perimeter and we're doing some of the new stuff we're doing, it's like, yeah, Jude, do your deal. Because I just have great trust with him. And that trust has really gone even specific with Henry. Like, he's so much more comfortable with the ball today than he was a year ago. Andy Garcia, he's almost too comfortable with the ball. He tries to do a little too much. Solo's the same. And so, like, Devontae Gardner was probably the best big I ever coached. But when the ball was in his hand, he was a magician. He was big, but his hands and feet, I mean, he's still playing. I think this is his 13th year playing professionally. Like, he was just so comfortable with the ball. And so, like, when we're talking about recruiting, it's hard to play anymore if you can't shoot. And I think it's harder to play if you don't have comfort when you have the ball, no matter where you have the ball. And we're playing 10 guys that I have comfort when they have the ball, no matter where they have the ball.
All right, that's a wrap.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.